This is my PC. It's been my faithful companion through thick and thin, but let's just say it houses some regrets. It's packing some serious power. It has an Intel i9 9900K, a GeForce RTX 2060 Super, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 1TB SSD. But what's the point of all that power if it's suffocating in dust and regret? Yeah, that's not RGB, it's dust. In this case, let's just say my biggest mistake wasn't putting an i9 in here, it was paying 80 euros for this thing. When it's off, it's sad. When it's on, it's even more sad. But not for long, because today, this dusty disaster is getting the makeover of a lifetime. Alright, first things first. Turn off the PC and unplug the power cord. Safety first, right? Next up, taking off the tempered glass. Always be careful here, you don't want things to shatter on you. Now I'm laying the PC on its back. Trust me, it's way easier to take the parts out when it's not wobbling around like a wobbly table. Check this out, dust galore, and that beautiful crusty thermal paste layer is like a time capsule of neglect. This is why cleaning your PC is important. Learn from my mistakes, folks. Next up, the GPU. Gotta be extra gentle here. This is the workhorse of the system, and replacing it isn't in the budget. And here's the rear fan. It's been working overtime to push air through this dusty mess. And here we have the RAM, two 16GB sticks doing their job, but now they're ready for a cleaner home. Now for the spaghetti. Disconnecting all the cables. Cable management isn't my forte, but we're getting better one build at a time. And replacing it isn't in the budget. Nah, but the GPU is fine, don't worry about it. I just gotta do my fancy tricks. The power supply unit comes out next. It's been powering this chaos, but now it's taking a short break. And last but definitely not least, the motherboard. With the CPU still attached, of course. This is the backbone of the build, so I'm being extra careful here. Disassembly complete. Next up, cleaning all these parts and prepping for the glow. Now it's time to clean the motherboard. This is where patience is key. If you rush, you might miss something important or damage a component. First, I'm removing the CPU. It's basically the crown jewel of the build, so it needs to stay safe and clean. Next, I'm unscrewing all the heatsinks. Pro tip, keep track of the screws. Losing one now means trouble later when you're putting everything back together. Now for the satisfying part, blasting away the dust. I'm using a blower motor here for this. It gets into all the nooks and crannies without damaging anything. After the air machine, I'm taking my time with a brush to get into every crook and corner. The goal is to make this board look brand new. With the board clean, it's time to give the heatsink some love. A quick brush to clear off any lingering dust, and then they're back where they belong. Next up, the I/O shield. Don't forget this step, it's small but important for keeping the build looking clean and professional. And finally, one last blow to the CPU socket for any sneaky dust particles. With that, the motherboard is clean and ready to go. Clean the CPU is simple. Start with a paper towel for the big chunks of thermal paste, then use 99.9% isopropyl alcohol on a soft toothbrush for the finishing touches. And it's good as new. Next up, the GPU. I always wondered where all the dust in the house was hiding. Turns out, it was in here. It's like a dust convention in here. Every particle in the house RSVP'd. I gave the GPU a deep clean, made sure the fans were spotless, and replaced the old thermal paste. Gotta keep this workhorse running cool. And just like that, it's looking brand new. Time for this powerhouse to shine in its new home. Next, I gave the RAM stick and the CPU cooler a quick dust off with a brush. Simple, easy and problem free. Or so I thought. And here's where the disaster struck. After vacuuming the radiator, I went to put the vacuum cleaner tube back in its dedicated slot. But it had other plans. At that moment, gravity decided to betray me. The tube fell straight onto my monitor, which was chilling on the floor to make space for this recording. You can hear the moment of impact. Rest in peace, my friend. You didn't deserve this. But at least my radiator is clean. And finally, the PSU, home to yet another dust colony. At this point I wasn't even surprised. It's like my PC has been moonlighting as an air purifier. Carefully brushed out all the dust, make sure to get into every corner. The PSU might not be flashy, but it's the heart of the build, so it deserves some love too. With that, every single part of this PC has been cleaned and is ready for the glow up. Let's start building. We are starting with the motherboard, the foundation of everything. The i9 goes back in first. There's something oddly satisfying about locking a CPU into place. It's like a tiny puzzle piece. And now the RAM. Always remember, slot 2 and 4 for dual channel goodness. The clicks never get old. Next, the motherboard goes into the new case, carefully aligning everything and securing it in with a few screws. Take your time here, this is one step you don't want to rush. And step 1 is complete. The new case is already looking good with the motherboard in place. Let's keep going. Side note, before I even got to installing the motherboard, I went ahead and removed the stock fans. Gonna make room for something a little prettier later on. Then I started installing the radiator in the front panel, making sure the tubes were at the bottom. Looked great at first, but spoiler alert, we had to rotate it later. Turns out the GPU wasn't gonna fit otherwise. With the radiator sorted, it was time for these beautiful white thermal right fans. They're a perfect match for a vibe I'm going for. Next up, the GPU. Dust free and thermal paste refreshed, it was ready to go in. Lastly, the PSU is going into place. Since I was connecting cables along the way, there's not much left to plug in. I did a quick power up to see if it would turn on. And you know what's coming next? Cable management. You all know how it goes. After a lot of struggles and well, a loss, ripped to my monitor, I finally finished the build, but hey, it's worth it. I made sure to sync all the RGB to white, because I've always wanted a clean white PC build, and I'm honestly thrilled with how it turned out. Alright folks, that's the build. Thanks for sticking with me through all the chaos, from dust bunnies to monitor mishaps. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss future projects. Catch you in the next one.